Grassley, Ms. Bondi, if you're successful in your nomination, this Democrat would like to give you 3 words of advice. Answer Grassley's letters. You'll never hear the end of it if you don't. At issue, I believe, in this nomination hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say no. More than any other cabinet official, the Attorney General has to be prepared to put the Constitution first and even tell the President of the United States you're wrong. The political danger and personal costs of such a decision are well documented. You have only to ask former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, whom Donald Trump sacked for lack of loyalty. And so I have 3 basic questions I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to...
When Senator Dick Durbin asked her if she could say under oath, without reservation, that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden, he was not merely checking her knowledge of history. He was probing whether she possessed the clarity and courage necessary for the role of Attorney General, a position that must be unshaken by political tides. The expectation was a simple, straightforward affirmation of an uncontested fact. Joe Biden won the 2020 election. But instead, Bondi delivered a winding, evasive answer that left many unsettled. She began by acknowledging that Joe Biden is the President of the United States and that there was a peaceful transfer of power. These were factual statements, yet carefully chosen to avoid directly saying Trump lost. Instead of confidently affirming the legitimacy of the 2020 results, Bondi pivoted to her involvement with Trump's campaign, claiming she was on the ground in Pennsylvania and witnessed things firsthand. This detour into anecdotal experience suggested an attempt to imply impropriety in the electoral process without offering evidence, reinforcing the same baseless doubts that Trump and his allies had promoted following the election. Her phrasing seemed intentionally constructed to placate both sides, offering just enough to technically affirm Biden's presidency while leaving room for interpretation about her personal beliefs on how the election unfolded. It's this strategic ambiguity that raised concern. For someone seeking to lead the Department of Justice, which must uphold election integrity and enforce the law without bias, this kind of response felt more like political maneuvering than principled leadership. She did at one point say, "I accept the results," but it came buried within qualifiers and vague references to what she had seen on the ground, never clarified or substantiated. Durbin pointed out the obvious. Her long, complex answer was not a sign of transparency, but of hesitation. It was a clear refusal to commit to a truth that might upset Donald Trump or his supporters. This moment stood in stark contrast to what the public expects from a chief law enforcement officer: certainty, honesty, and courage in the face of political pressure. Bondi's failure to give an unambiguous yes to a question so foundational to democracy sent a troubling message. If she couldn't affirm a certified election result in front of a Senate committee, how could the public trust her to defend that same democratic process under pressure?
What I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no. And I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer yes. Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he urged the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,780 votes and declare him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
The question posed by Senator Durbin was simple and direct. Had she heard the recording in which Trump urged the Georgia official to find 11,780 votes, the exact number needed to flip the state's outcome in his favor? This recording had already been widely circulated, heavily covered in the media, and condemned by legal experts as potentially criminal interference in an election. For a former prosecutor and someone seeking confirmation as Attorney General, Bondi's answer should have been clear and decisive. Instead, it was vague, dismissive, and evasive. She admitted she had not listened to the full hour-long call, only snippets or clips she had seen online. That alone was startling. Given the high-profile nature of the call and its centrality to ongoing investigations and public concern about democratic integrity, most Americans had heard or read the transcript in full by that point. More than anyone, Bondi, a legal professional, should have taken the time to understand every nuance of a phone call that was already under legal scrutiny and had become symbolic of Trump's alleged attempts to subvert a legitimate election result. Even when Durbin quoted Trump's exact words of "find 780 votes, Bondi responded by saying she needed to hear the call in its full context. This was not a moment where context significantly changed the core message. The statement was clear, precise, and disturbing. For the nation's potential top law enforcement officer to downplay it or withhold judgment was troubling. Instead of acknowledging the deeply problematic nature of a president directly pressuring a state official to alter certified results, she opted for deflection. She said she would have to listen to the tape, and even suggested that the quote might have been taken out of context despite having no basis to make that claim. Bondi's response failed not only the legal standard of awareness, but also the moral standard of leadership. A seasoned prosecutor would instinctively react to such a quote with concern, if not outright condemnation. Instead, Bondi's answer signaled a reluctance to confront Trump's conduct, mirroring a broader trend of political loyalty taking precedence over principle. Durbin pushed her further, emphasizing that the full tape was available and that every American should listen to it. Yet she still would not engage with the substance of Trump's words.
Let me ask you about your work as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners. You did not list your current position as a partner at the lobbying firm, nor the work you've done for your Ballard Partner clients, such as lobbying for the country of Qatar for $115,000 a month, and for corporate giants Amazon and Uber when you're asked about conflicts of interest. Why do you believe your work as a lobbyist does not constitute potential conflicts of interest?
Well, Senator, first, that was the amount my firm received. I believe multiple people represented the country of Qatar within my firm. My role, and I am very proud of the work that I did, it was a short time and I wish it had been longer for Qatar, was anti-human trafficking efforts leading into the World Cup, which is something I'd like to talk about later too. I was registered as FARA along with many members of my firm. That was the sole portion of my representation for Qatar. Now, if there are any conflicts with anyone I represented in private practice, I would consult with the career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision. I would also like to point out to you, I don't believe that I would be the first Attorney General.
Bondi began by stating that the payments made to the firm, for example, the $115,000 monthly fee from Qatar, were not personally hers, but paid to the firm as a whole, implying that others were involved and thus deflecting personal responsibility. She said her role for Qatar focused on anti-human trafficking efforts ahead of the World Cup, and that she was proud of this work. While that may have been true, she provided little explanation as to why none of this was disclosed in the necessary forms, or how she would ensure that such connections would not affect her decisions as Attorney General. Her tone was defensive, and her answers lacked the kind of ethical clarity the moment demanded. When pressed further about her work with the GEO Group, Bondi again shifted into technical language. She confirmed that she had lobbied for the company, which profits significantly from federal immigration detention contracts, particularly under Trump-era immigration policies. The GEO Group has been criticized for multiple serious issues, including safety violations, poor medical care, and mismanagement within its facilities. These concerns are not minor or speculative. They are documented and highly relevant to the Department of Justice's oversight responsibilities. Durbin asked a pointed and crucial question. If Bondi were confirmed as Attorney General, would she recuse herself from any cases involving former clients like Geo Group? Bondi did not give a clear yes or no. Instead, she said she would consult with career ethics officials at the Justice Department and follow their advice. While this might appear reasonable on the surface, it effectively dodged accountability. The issue wasn't whether she would ask others for advice. It was whether she personally recognized the inherent conflict in overseeing investigations or decisions involving entities she had recently been paid to represent. By failing to commit to recusals or fully disclose her past lobbying efforts, Bondi raised serious concerns about her ability to act impartially. Her statements made it appear that she viewed her transition from lobbyist to Attorney General as seamless and unproblematic, when in fact it demands extraordinary ethical vigilance. The justice system relies on public trust, and trust is built on transparency and accountability. Bondi's refusal to fully confront the ethical implications of her lobbying history, and to give direct answers about future recusals, undermined that trust. At a time when public skepticism about conflicts of interest in government is at an all-time high, her vague responses were more than insufficient. They were disqualifying.
General, who has represented and advocated for businesses in their past.
Of course not. The question is whether you will recuse yourself from any case involving your Ballard clients. One of those clients was the GEO Group, was it not?
Geo, yes.
A private prison company you lobbied for. It manages correctional institutions and detention facilities. The GEO Group has faced criticism for safety violations, inadequate health care, and poor management. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is GEO's largest source of revenue. Under the Trump administration, GEO stands to earn hundreds of millions of dollars by detaining immigrants if there is this mass deportation. Would you sense any conflict of interest if you're asked to judge the performance of this government contractor?
Senator, I will consult with the career ethics officials within the Department of Justice and make the appropriate decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank
You
you.
forgot to say that